Well, hi there and welcome to the Richie Allen television show in association with davidike.com and beyondvision.tv, BVTV. How are you? Hope you've had a good week. It is Friday, the 5th of February 2016. I've had a good old week. It's been a good week on the radio show. If you missed any of the radio shows this week, David Icke, David Shurter, Jordan Maxwell, John Rappaport, Gilad Atzmon amongst the guests this week. It's been a good old week on this show. Lots to get through today. We're going to talk about the demonisation of Russia a bit later on. We'll talk about Hillary Clinton, or Hillary Clinton, Gerald Celente. I think it was Gerald who coined the term, the name, Hillary Clinton. We'll talk about her. We'll talk about Jeb Bush. We'll talk about Donald Rumsfeld. We're kind of American-centric later on in the programme today. Hayden Hewitt's not well, but he's here. How are you, pal? You're hanging on in there. You're dying. You are. The man is not well. He's got back problems, and that ain't funny when you're having them. But it's because of all that undateable stuff. You deserve it.
I'm being punished. I'm being punished by somebody's deity of choice.
Yeah, but you're here, buddy. I appreciate that.
I'm here and I'm already enjoying it.
Correct and present, and you'll be dropping in during the programme. By the way, Hayden, do you want to see somebody getting slapped in the face by a dildo? I bet this is the Live League show. We've morphed into the Live League show.
Did you ever think a day would come when you had to actually ask if I wanted?
Unbelievable. What I'm doing is I'm angling to replace you when you take a night off the Live League show. So this is very Live League show-esque. Well, it's kind of newsworthy as well. Our viewers, our listeners will know that this week New Zealand signed the Trans-Pacific Partnership. Yeah. Look, we won't get too deep into that. We've done it lots of times on the programme. It's a tyranny. It's a terrible thing. But they did. And mass protests over this have taken place in New Zealand already. And in the small town of Waitangi, could be a city, one woman whose name is... What's her name? I'm scrolling down now frantically. She's got a funny name as well. Josie Butler. She got to be Irish. Josie Butler. She got well pissed off about it, and she threw a dildo at the New Zealand Economic Development Minister, Stephen Joyce. Hayden, play it there. Play it there, Sam.
Absolutely. We always take something away from everything.
That's for raping our sovereignty. I know.
Pink dildos, the weapon of choice for protesters in New Zealand. What do you think of that? It's quite funny, that. What do you think? It's brilliant, isn't it? Have some of that.
You keep going to, like, what better way of showing
your
pleasure?
I'll tell you what, Hayden, New Zealanders are up in arms about it. You've spoken a lot about these trade agreements on your programmes. I have. And well, they might be up in arms about their country signing this particular
Politicians should count themselves lucky that all that's being thrown at them
is dildos.
With sex toys.
Absolutely,
when
spot
you think
on, mate.
what they're doing with that legislation.
Spot on. We're recording this, of course, in the AM on Friday. You know this because we tell you this every week. Big story, of course, on BBC News in London today, as well as all the broadsheet newspapers today, is the story of the UN panel deciding that Julian Assange has been held arbitrarily here in England. He should be allowed to walk away free, and he should be compensated for his deprivation of liberty according to a UN legal panel. He faces extradition to Sweden, of course, because of allegations which he denies, rape allegations which he denies, and he's been holed up in the Ecuadorian embassy in London since 2012. Now, the UK Foreign Office has said that they basically contested the report. It doesn't have any basis in law, and that he will be arrested should he choose to leave the embassy. It was suggested yesterday that upon hearing the news from the UN, Assange would hand himself over to UK police. At this point in time, he hasn't done that. Now, I've got a very complicated set of feelings about Julian Assange, WikiLeaks, and people like Edward Snowden. Just to say, I've never been overly convinced about the enormity of, or the benefit to humanity of, the information released by WikiLeaks and latterly by people like Edward Snowden. A lot of what they released, in terms of the cables they released, we knew about anyway. And there are a lot of people in the independent media, some of them idiots, it must be said, but they're not all idiots. Some of the people we like who wonder about the validity of people like Julian Assange and WikiLeaks and Are they controlled opposition? What did they really tell us that we didn't know, and that sort of stuff? I think that's interesting. I haven't an opinion on that as of yet, but I'm no fan of WikiLeaks in terms of what happened to Chelsea Manning, formerly Bradley Manning. I think Hayden Hewitt, my friend, they did nothing to protect the anonymity of Bradley Manning. Assange put a lovely long leather jacket on him. He got his hair fixed up. He started acting like a rock star. But Chelsea Manning went to fucking prison.
Yeah, Chelsea Manning's
kind
of doing the hard yards.
Yeah. Right, and I don't think they did a lot to protect her or him. Her. That's all I'm saying on that. What do you think? It's a difficult one. We don't know.
It's incredibly hard because WikiLeaks have released a lot of very interesting...
They're interesting, but we knew we were being spied on.
But my issues with WikiLeaks fall towards the cult of personality with Assange.
Yeah.
And also the editorialising WikiLeaks have done. The one that initially really caused me concern was the collateral murder video.
The helicopter video.
Now, I saw someone deconstruct that video from the other side to show why it wasn't murder. Why they would have mistaken these guys. And there was bits from the beginning and from the end, and there was a lot, and it was equally as convincing as any argument.
Yeah.
But because WikiLeaks had registered the domain collateral murder and called it murder, everyone was convinced.
Yeah,
and that's a tremendous problem for me.
Yeah.
You know, I'm like, I think you've got to be hands
I'm with
up.
you, and the behaviour of him. In fact, I interviewed Kristen Rafsnan on TPV in London when he became the spokesperson for WikiLeaks. And it wasn't a great interview by any stretch of the imagination, because I went after him about that, and I went after him about not protecting the sources, and he didn't like it very much. The interview didn't last very long. But anyway, any more to tell you about Assange, we'll do it in due course on the radio show and on other shows. I'm sure we'll get a bit of hate for that. We're not against people releasing cables and leaks and stuff like that, but I'm not overly convinced that what they released was vital, number one, and number two, that we didn't know about it anyway. Another day. Let's crack on. There's a lot to tell you about. Stay with davidicke.com/headlines. Go to liveleak.com. This is where, the sort of videos that you should see but you don't see on YouTube. And of course, stay with BVTV at beyondvision.tv. Something we've been predicting on programmes like this, and something our colleagues and our friends and our sponsors have been predicting for a long time. The homeless in Hackney in London are facing expulsion from the streets due to a new law which will allow the police to give out fines and other legal penalties to homeless people whom are found loitering, begging and sleeping in commercial places. The Public Space Protection Order, which was introduced by the Council of Hackney, will place a fine of £1,000 on homeless people and homeless activities. The order has been met with numerous criticisms, fierce criticisms, in fact, with many pointing out that what you are effectively doing is criminalising homelessness. Matt Downey of the homeless charity Crisis, one of those saying that the homeless population in London has been victimised enough. That's a brilliant cartoon, that. I'll tell you something else. This Public Space Protection Order introduced in Hackney several months ago, a petition which had 7,000, 8,000, 9,000, I can't remember the exact number, of signatures or signees, you could say, prompted the Hackney Council to say, well, we'll revisit this, but they haven't done. This is coming in. Now, the BBC covered this particular subject to their credit only a few weeks ago, I think in late November it was, and we've got a snippet of a report from the BBC. Play that, Hayden. This is the BBC clip on homelessness.
Sleeping on the streets since 2004. Jason says he feels safe in the hidden spaces and stairwells he knows.
Yeah, I crawl in through the back and I'm sheltered in there. I'm protected, I'm safe.
Attempts to go into housing over the years haven't worked. Jason is what some call entrenched homeless. The proposed ban would make sleeping here in the city centre an offence. But he fears the response he'd get bedding down elsewhere.
It's crazy. I mean, they're pushing us from town to the estates. The people on the estates don't want us up there, so they're going to either kick us in or fit us in. We're not going to have a good time up there. We're going to have a terrible time. We were safer in town.
Public space protection orders are designed to stop antisocial behaviour. Whereas so-called ASBOs target individuals, these prohibit things like drinking and begging in defined areas. The inclusion of sleeping rough is controversial.
I think that we will find that we are likely to have things like deaths on the streets in Newport if people are isolated and not protected by what the safety.
Well, one of two things is meant to happen to homeless people. One, they're either meant to die off, and when they die off, they can't claim any more state assistance. But two, they will end up in prisons, in debtors' prisons, in poorhouses. And this isn't nonsense. This isn't crazy conspiracy theory. We are beginning the privatisation process of prisons in this country now, following on from what's happened in the United States. And as we do so, more and more prisons will be handed over to disgusting firms. Absolutely disgusting firms. Criminal firms like G4S and Serco. The state will undertake the privatisation of that. We know this. As I said, look at what happened in the United States. Deals being done between the state. When I say the state, it could be Texas, it could be Louisiana, it could be Oklahoma, with private companies, which involve the state committing to keep those prisons full or up to 98% or over 98% occupancy. That's what we're going to see. That is George Orwell's 1984 right there. And something else on that, now this is kind of a segue, something else I came across, and I mentioned this on the radio show last night. It was announced by RT this week that Britain, private security companies in Britain are amongst the most successful in terms of getting government contracts to work overseas in the world. Last year alone, G4S getting over £150 million from the British government to go and police oil wells in certain countries, embassies here, embassies there, and also look after British corporate interests in various Middle Eastern countries with no oversight whatsoever. It's an incredible thing. We'll get into that in future programmes. We're going to move along right now, though, and talk about the Zika virus. Now, to say that the Zika virus is being sensationalised in the British media and in the world media this week is an absolute understatement. And as I'm chatting to you now, Hayden is flashing up a number of different stories there about the Zika virus. While those stories are online, or on the screen there, and by the way, today we learned that planes arriving at British airports that have arrived from areas where there have been confirmed outbreaks of Zika virus will be hosed down by insecticide, hosed down using insecticide. I kid you not. This is incredible. The Zika virus is a disease which is spread by a type of mosquito in some hot countries. It's very, very unlikely to affect Britain because the mosquitoes that carry the virus, or the disease even I should say, live in tropical countries and would find it too cold in this country. When somebody gets Zika, they usually are not affected badly at all. They feel a bit unwell. It's something like a cold. Here's an incredible bit of information for you, factual information. Again, in the independent media, this has been reported this week. The Rockefeller Foundation owned the patent for the virus. It was discovered 70 years ago. It's sold at around $600 a pop to biologists and virologists who work on it. But amazingly, no vaccine, even though they've had it for 70 years. And we've been told this week that this virus, around for 70 years, causing very mild symptoms, is responsible for an outbreak of microcephaly, or at least that's what they want us to believe. Now, last night on the Richie Allen radio show, I spoke with the amazing health journalist John Rappaport, and we've got a screenshot here of a blog, a WordPress blog, a story written by John Rappaport this week. Kind of incredible, this. And one of the things John was able to discover and was able to write about in his story is that far from the Zika virus being a main cause of microcephaly, John was able to discover that 25,000 cases of microcephaly are discovered each year in the UK. Microcephaly is a condition that causes brain damage to children, and it causes them to have shrunken heads. It's not very nice, and I would imagine if you if you have a child and they have this condition, it's not very nice at all. But it isn't entirely uncommon. And there's a screen grab there, X-ray on the left, or MRI on it's MRI head, not X-ray, isn't it? MRI on the left shows a child with a normal skull. On the right there, you see child with microcephaly. We've also got a screenshot of a report of the Quality Standards Subcommittee of the American Academy of Neurology and the Practice Committee of the Child Neurology Society, which confirms that 25,000 cases of microcephaly a year occur in the United States. But importantly, and I quote from that report, and this is government report now in America, microcephaly may result from any insult that disturbs early brain growth. Okay? It may result from any insult that disturbs early brain growth. Annually, again, approximately 25,000 infants in the US will be diagnosed with microcephaly. So, and that's the report there. And it's really important now because straight out of the horse's mouth, Hayden is scrolling in on it there. So they're lying then. They're telling monumental lies. Absolutely monumental lies. And Hayden, I know I'm jumping around here now. Maybe I shouldn't be doing that. But do you want to quickly put up that Wall Street Journal story, mate, if you don't mind? Because this is really important. Because only yesterday, the Wall Street Journal is one newspaper which has begun to back off the story. And it basically says there that the rate of Zika-related birth defects in Brazil is uncertain. This is yesterday. So what John Rappaport told me, and you can find him at nomorefakenews.com, is that he believes they're lying, and he believes that this Zika virus story is a cover story for a greater story, which might be that interference in that region of Brazil by companies like Monsanto, by companies releasing genetically modified mosquitoes, maybe, for example, might be leading to the increase in the rates of microcephaly in the region. Pesticides, malnutrition, street drugs, vaccines maybe even, who knows, although there's no proof of that. But the Zika virus isn't causing microcephaly. And I'll leave that there because there's not really much else I can say about that, other than you've already seen with the Wall Street Journal, there is a backing off the story. The Zika virus isn't a major or a main contributor to microcephaly. It isn't. I think we can say that with great certainty. So why are our governments trying to convince us otherwise? And why, despite that Wall Street Journal story yesterday, is today's news full of stories about decontaminating planes, about people shouldn't travel here, they shouldn't travel there. If you live in this part of the world, you should maybe not give birth for 2 years. What's really going on? I think we'll take a quick break at this point, mate, will we? Take a quick break? We'll take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to talk about the mainstream media's assault on Russia and its propensity for stories this week that tell us that Russia is the biggest danger in the world right now. We'll get into that. We'll get into Hillary Clinton, Donald Rumsfeld and much more besides on the Richie Allen Show in association with DavidIke.com and BVTV. Back in a minute.
Here at Accounts Direct, we understand that, as a small business owner, it's all too easy to find yourself up to your neck in, something this colour. We'll get you out of the stuff, and with our experience in restructuring, planning, and even refinancing, we'll help you stay out of it too. Accounts Direct. Accountants on your side. Said
And you're very welcome back to the Richie Allen television show in association with DavidIke.com and BeyondVision.tv. Take a quick look at DavidIke.com. Mentioned last week on the programme and the week before, David is going to be on tour, the Worldwide Wake Up Tour, which is through 2017. He's all over the world, pretty much in every continent. He'll be in Britain, he'll be in London in June, in Manchester next year, Australia, America. All the details are on David's website. But also, and you can see it here, his new book, Phantom Self, is out now and available to buy on davidicke.com. It's a fantastic book. It really is. It's marvellous. So check that out. Buy it there at davidicke.com. We're on the headlines page now. It's always good to stay with davidicke.com/headlines to get a different perspective on the big news stories of the day. And I also want to give a big shout out to liveleak.com too. The LiveLeak television show. We didn't have it this week because, as you know, Hayden has been struggling this week with his back. But it will be back next Thursday at 10 p.m. GMT. LiveLeak.com, one of the most important websites in the world. It doesn't consider itself a part of the independent media. Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. But in the independent media, we find it invaluable. It's one of the greatest websites in the world. You see things on there. You see testimonials from countries all over the world, from people living lives in those countries that you will never see in the mainstream media. Check out liveleak.com. BeyondVision.tv, that's the website for all the news about the Beyond Vision Foundation, the charity, what it's trying to do, especially with the BVTV arm of it. Go to beyondvision.tv. There's a lot to get through in the second part of the programme. Mentioned before the break, the Pentagon is quadrupling its European defence budget because the Russians are going to kill us all. Every one of us. Have we woken up in 1955, I wonder? You would think this week we have done. You're going to come in on this in a minute, but before you do, let's listen to Ashton Carter, the US Defence Secretary.
The Pentagon chief, Ashton Carter, has announced a fourfold increase in the US's defence budget for Europe in the last couple of hours, citing Russian aggression as the main reason for it. Washington plans now then to spend a whopping $3.4 billion countering it.
The emergence of ISIL and the resurgence of Russia, we're taking a strong and balanced approach to deter Russian aggression, reinforcing our posture in Europe to support our NATO allies in the face of Russia's aggression.
Russia topped Ashton Carter's list of global challenges facing America. He also cited two in order: China, North Korea, followed by Iran. Islamic State, you might find it a bit peculiar to hear, was mentioned down the list in fifth place, though the US Defence Secretary wants to spend more on fighting ISIL than on security in Europe, $7.5 billion. Experts believe that Washington's seeking to become the world's sole military superpower.
The ISIS guys are properly pissed off. How many people do we have to fucking behead to be in the top three? So Russia, China, North Korea, Iran and the Islamic State of Iraq, the Levant. Those are the five biggest challenges facing us in Europe. So they're going to quadruple their European defence budget. Oh, that's incredible, that. Islamic State being in fifth. Of course they are. Do you want to come in on that? I mean,
I just love the league table.
The league table. It's almost like Top of the Pops there, yeah.
They released a video of them running some poor kid over with a tank the other day. A tank. They made him stand there and wait for it. They're still only at number 5.
And they're still only at number 5.
It goes to show, you see, it's not about...
You know what I would argue, my friend? They are in fifth because they are the least fucking dangerous because they created them.
They've not got the volume.
No.
It's all about volume.
No. You're spot on.
The guys aren't doing the volume.
John Kerry was in Italy the other day. You probably saw this. And a woman jumped up and shouted, "You created ISIS." Kerry couldn't argue with it. She was dragged in before she could say any more. When you create them, they're no real threat to you. They are to everybody else, but not to the United States. Oh, Jesus. And about Russia, Hayden. We know the US orchestrated a coup in Ukraine. Destabilised the Middle East through illegal wars. All the countries on Russia's border, on their western border, broke a central promise made after the fall of the Berlin Wall that NATO wouldn't move another step east. Russia is surrounded. Who's the aggressor in the region? I've no time for Vladimir Putin or billionaire oligarchs or former KGB guys who may or may not have committed murders. Extrajudicial murders. But Russia is not the aggressor. Even you would agree with that.
Yeah, they're certainly the aggressor in other ways. Like every conflict, everyone wants a good guy and a bad guy. Everyone wants a good guy and a bad guy.
Well, the system wants us to believe in a good versus evil paradigm.
Time and time and time again, it's proven that it's been a long time since we've had a good guy and a bad guy. It's been a long time, maybe, 70 years?
It's a long time.
Since we've had an identifiable, right, do you know what? Yeah, batshit. Crazy.
Yeah.
Off his trolley, which was called Hitler, and then, of course, Stalin. But he was our friend, so we don't. For a while, he was our friend, so we forgive the millions he killed.
Yeah.
For now. But it's very hard to identify now.
It is, and in the absence of any questioning media, you know, when we talk about Victoria Nuland, the wife of Bob Kagan, the disgusting neoconservative, the Secretary of State for Eurasian and European Affairs, and her orchestrating the coup in Ukraine and putting Natalie Jaresko in there to run the Ukraine's finances. You know, for all of that to be ignored, and for the BBC, and we're going to come to the BBC now, because the propaganda war on Russia, we've never seen anything like it this week. Do you want to run that clip?
Do you know what? I do, yes.
The BBC documentary. Well, it's a screen grab, isn't it? We've got a screen grab. This is amazing. This is a programme on the BBC this week.
No, we don't have a...
We have a clip, don't we? It's the Martin Macaulay clip, isn't it?
The one, yeah.
Let's play that.
I'm going to bring it up for you.
Now, he's a senior British historian at the University College London, and he's well cheesed off at the conduct of the BBC. Have a look at Martin Macaulay.
You can put it down as psychological warfare. Back in the days of the Soviet Union was seen as the bad boy, the threat to British security, Western security, and so on. Now, Russia, in fact, is now playing that role. And it's very dismal, it's very disappointing.
But the BBC is doing this. You say the BBC is kind of settling in on this, but it's supposed to be a balanced, impartial, a bastion of it.
Well, that depends on your point of view, because some people would say BBC is not biased. Other people would say it has an agenda, and it's following that agenda. And if you look at the BBC News, it reports negatively, as do most channels, on Russia. There's hardly ever a positive story. I can't remember. In fact, I don't really watch the BBC News anymore because you don't really rely on it for direct interest-free points of view. So you're looking at for other channels. I look for other channels to find the news, to read the newspapers.
Why would they be making programmes like that, imagining scenarios where Russia is an aggressor and Russia attacks sovereign states within Europe, and it leads to the outbreak of World War III and it leads to nuclear war? Why would they be doing that now? I suggest that it's because Russia's involvement in the so-called Syrian question, or the Syrian conflict, has resulted in a massive halting of the gallop of the plans of the United States and Britain and the West and the agenda and all of that. That's the problem, you see, right there. And we have this, we have a link to this programme now, this BBC programme. And what it is, this is the tagline of this programme. I want you to listen to this. This is the tagline. Following the crisis in Ukraine and Russia's involvement in Syria, the world is closer to superpower confrontation than at any time since the Cold War. Now a war room of former British military and senior diplomatic figures comes together to war game a hypothetical hot war in Eastern Europe, including the unsinkable nuclear war. It is incredible. And last night on BBC Question Time, which I watched for my sins, one of the central questions asked was had David Cameron done anything in the last few days to convince the British public that, yes, Britain should remain within the European Union? And nearly every one of the panel, a panel that included Anna Soubry, a panel that included the woman who wrote the recent biography of David Cameron, which included the Pig's Head revelations, all of them returned to the central idea that with the uncertainty of Russia and what Russia might be planning to do in the future, it's better that we all stay together in the European Union. It is propaganda from all sides. It really is. It's staggering. And it's going unchallenged and unquestioned through the British and the world media, I would say. And we'll return to propaganda now in a couple of minutes' time. That documentary is available now on iPlayer, on the BBC iPlayer, if you want to watch it yourselves. Ask yourself why. Why make those sorts of films now? The same sort of films they were making during the so-called Cold War. I mean, you know, and by the way, I've got to say this before we move on to Donald Rumsfeld. Something that David Icke, who is a big supporter of this programme, has been saying for many, many, many years, that the agenda is eventually going to push for a massive global conflict between the West and between Russia. Defence Secretary, the biggest threats to security and to peace in the world right now are Russia and China, he said. And I'm not going to labour the point and go on and on again about what the United States is and has done in the world, is doing and has done over the last 2 to 3 decades. Look who's back in town, Donald Rumsfeld. And we have a story this week in the Daily Mail. He's advertising his new app. I shit you not, Hayden. He's got an app. It's a version of Solitaire. A version that Winston Churchill used to play, apparently. And Rummy is doing the rounds of the world's chat shows to promote his new app. While on these shows, he's demonstrated that he hasn't lost his sharp analytical ability to break down what's going on in the world. Take a look at this clip.
We saw the Arab Spring that turned into an Arab summer and an Arab winter, and it's been going on. It is a very difficult, dangerous, and untidy world with a lot of people funding terrorism, people recruiting for terrorism, and it's a difficult.
A lot of people are funding and arming terrorists, said Rummy. You better fucking believe they are. And a lot of people, like Rummy, for example, and Dick Cheney, and all these old neocon pals, are making a lot of money out of funding these people. You know, Hayden, I would venture a guess that Donald Rumsfeld is the greatest fucking liar that ever lived, and should be in jail for the rest of his life. And we should spend millions and millions on isolating the ageing gene to keep him in jail for hundreds of fucking years.
But the guy's got his finger on the pulse.
Yeah.
He's releasing an app, and he says people are funding terrorism.
Imagine it.
If that kindly grandfather...
83-year-old, you just told me. I didn't know he was 83.
83 years old. Now, the funny thing is, he's there, and you look at him, and the way he looks, you think... Cheney, though. Now, if he came out and said he had an app, you think that's got to be one evil bastard of an app. See, Rumsfeld, it's good. He's got that grandfather thing. They can trot him out to say these things. Because if Cheney actually said people are funding terrorism, you know he'd just have a little twitch.
He'd have a little twitch.
Just a little.
I'm not joking about the ageing gene. I'd love somebody to figure out how to halt the ageing gene in his tracks, just for the likes of him. But we've dug out a couple of clips from the archives just to show you who these people really are. How dare Channel 4 News bring him on a television programme to talk about an app and then to tell lies about the funding of terrorists. Have a look at this from the legendary documentary series The Power of Nightmares, made by Adam Curtis, and the last good thing the BBC did. Watch this.
Rumsfeld began to make speeches alleging that the Soviets were ignoring Kissinger's treaties and secretly building up their weapons with the intention of attacking America.
The Soviet Union has been busy. They've been busy in terms of their level of effort. They've been busy in terms of the actual weapons that they've been producing. They've been busy in terms of expanding production rates. They've been busy in terms of expanding their institutional capability to produce additional weapons at additional rates. They've been busy in terms of expanding their capability to increasingly improve the sophistication of those weapons. Year after year after year, they've been demonstrating that they have steadiness of purpose, that they're purposeful about what they're doing. Now, your question is, what ought one to be doing about that?
You heard it right there. Adam Curtis telling you that. Cheney knew then. Cheney did, but Rumsfeld certainly did. Rumsfeld knew then that Russia had nothing and that Russia posed no threat to the United States. What one ought to be doing about that, he kept saying. What ought one to be doing about that? Well, we know what they did do. They spent trillions of dollars on nuclear weapons and fancy space age defence systems, blah, blah, blah. You know the story. Telling lies about Russia. History does repeat itself. And on that subject of who this guy is or was, we dug out this as well. This legendary clip about the Bin Laden caves. Have a look at this.
There was constant discussion about him hiding out in caves, and I think many times the American people have a perception that it's a little hole dug out of a side of a mountain.
Oh, no.
This is it. This is a fortress.
Yes.
A complex, multi-tiered, bedrooms and offices on the top, as you can see. Secret exits on the side and on the bottom. Cut deep to avoid thermal detection. A ventilation system to allow people to breathe and to carry on. The entrance is large enough to drive trucks and even tanks. Even computer systems and telephone systems. It's a very sophisticated operation.
Oh, you bet. This is serious business. And there's not one of those. There are many of those.
So you would think that any man or woman who perpetrated or perpetuated those lies on the American people, lies that resulted in the deaths of millions of people in the Middle East, you would think they would be in jail right now and not hawking a solitaire app on Channel 4 News and being interviewed by the Daily Mail. Incredible. Not one of those, he said back then. There were several caves like that around the Tora Bora Mountains. And as for the Arab Springs and the Arab Winters, the Arab Springs which have become the Arab Winters in Syria and all those problems, that story is dead. It's all out in the open now. Listen to Vermont Republican Senator Richard Black, a Vietnam War veteran, talking about what really happened in Syria. Have a look at this.
People need to understand that the war in Syria was not a domestic uprising. This was not some Arab Spring where you had some democracy seekers with flowers in their hair seeking to bring about some wonderful utopia. These were hardcore jihadists led by the Muslim Brotherhood with support from CIA, from MI6, and with help from the Saudi Arabians and the Turks. The Saudi Arabians and the Turks are the motivating force behind all.
You're shaking your head in disgust there. The whole thing is a lie. From the moment we wake up in the morning, the ads we see on telly, the ads we hear on radio, the news broadcasts we hear, what we read in our papers, every bit of it is a massive lie from the moment, as I said, from dawn till dusk. Isn't it?
Well, it's like with the Syria situation, okay? Now, I know when things are happening on the ground, like, for example, let's look at, the Paris attacks.
Yeah.
The story changes.
Yeah.
9/11, story changes because it's happening, and even the best journalists in the world are relying on information. They're grabbing, there's panic, people, they're getting what they can. And the story emerges.
Yeah, that's okay for 24, 36 hours now.
We get that.
Yeah.
So, with the early part of the Syria story, Syria not being the most open country to the Western world previously, we were sold the idea of, well, Assad's the bad guy, these guys are the good guys. This is an Arab Spring, it's Arab uprising. No, these are definitely the good guys. We're giving them guns. These are the good guys. And then, like I say, on Lively, we started noticing these videos coming through of laughing while they killed Syrian soldiers with the rebar.
We'd never have known if it wasn't for Lively.
Exactly. That's where, and other sites. But that's where we found out. It's like, well, hang on. Well, I thought these were the good guys. Oh, yeah, they're the same, right? Oh, so they all love killing each other, and that's what was happening in Syria. Was basically. Lost people killing each other, and there were no good guys.
We want to get rid of Bashar al-Assad, therefore we're going to arm the most heinous lunatics that we can find in that country and set them to war on the Syrian government. It's as simple as that.
Look at what it's turned into.
Imagine having meetings in London. Imagine having meetings in London. Imagine David Cameron yesterday, it's been in the news, raising £12 billion for relief in Syria, to relieve the suffering in Syria. Not a single question from anybody in the media in the press conference yesterday. How is that going to be dispersed in Syria, that money? I should say dispersed.
Well,
how is that going to be spent there? Who's going to spend it there?
We're going to give that to the 60,000 moderate fighters at arms who will then distribute it kindly, equitably.
They're not even trying to hide it now.
No, they're not. It's just that money will be put in there in form of guns.
And on that stage yesterday was a procession of people who live in countries where human rights abuses are a daily occurrence.
What I don't understand.
On the same stage.
But didn't they just vote to bomb Syria a couple of months
That's right.
ago? And now we're giving them aid, but now we're going to take in more.
You see, Hayden, that's a dangerous thought there.
Give them unemployment benefits.
You've just done a very dangerous thing there. That's a journalistic thing to do.
Don't be accusing me of that now.
Excuse me, Prime Minister. What have we just outlined hundreds of millions of pounds to bomb the shit out of these people for if you're going to come back to us in a few weeks' time to raise money to go and help them? Not a single question.
See, thing is that if only I could trust myself to ask that question where I'm putting foot in front of him and not end it as you know how I would end that line. But yeah, it's wonderfully tidy, isn't it? We bomb them, we feed them, we then bomb them.
We hopefully get rid of their government, and then we award massive, lucrative contracts to our friends in the city to go and build new buildings there.
Yeah.
While at the same time we bring in Monsanto. We bring in Glaxo and Merck and all of our friends. It's the same shit, mate, but it's a different year. I'll tell you what.
Nothing's ever going to change.
Regardless of what, I mean, and you might be watching this on YouTube today, and you might be thinking, oh, the likes of David Icke and the likes of Jordan Maxwell, they go way too far for me. I'll tell you what, give it a try. Give it a go. Have a look at recent interviews on the Richie Allen radio show with David Icke and with Jordan Maxwell. Listen to what they're saying the real endgame is regarding all of this. Give it some thought. That's all I'm saying to you, regardless of how far-fetched or far out there you might think it is. Hayden, we're going to move on with Hillary Clinton. We're kind of coming to the end now. This was very interesting because Hillary Clinton was asked a real question by a CNN presenter this week, I think on Thursday. She was asked about $675,000 she was given for 3 speeches she made to Goldman Sachs. Now, Hayden, I'm not the greatest student or the greatest mathematician in the world, but that equates to £325,000 or dollars even per speech. Have a look at the reaction of Hillary when she's asked the question. Here we go.
One of the things that Senator Sanders points to and a lot of your critics point to is you made 3 speeches for Goldman Sachs. You were paid $675,000 for 3 speeches. Was that a mistake? I mean, was that a bad error in judgment?
Look, I made speeches to lots of groups. I told them what I thought. I answered questions.
But did you have to be paid $675,000?
Well, I don't know. That's what they offered. So, you know, every Secretary of State that I know has done that.
But that's usually once they're office and not running for an office again.
Well, I didn't
you
know.
must have known.
To be honest, I wasn't committed to running. I didn't know whether I would or not.
You didn't think you were going to run for president again?
I didn't. You know, when I was Secretary of State, several times I said, you know, I think I'm done. And, you know, so many people came to me, started talking to me. The circumstances, the concerns I had about the Republicans taking back the White House, because I think they wrecked what we achieved in the 90s with 23 million new jobs and incomes going up for everybody. I did not want to see that happen again. I want to defend President Obama's accomplishments and the progress we've made. I want to go further. So, yeah, I was convinced. But, you know, anybody who knows me, who thinks that they can influence me, name anything they've influenced me on. Just name one thing. I'm out here every day saying I'm going to shut them down. I'm going after them. I'm going to jail them if they should be jailed. I'm going to break them up. I mean, they're not giving me very much money now, I can tell you that much. Fine with me. I'm proud to have 90% of my donations from small donors and 60%, the highest ever from women, which I'm really, really proud of.
Mentioned on the radio show last night that pathological doesn't cover it anymore. We might need to petition the Oxford Concise Dictionary to come up with a new word to describe that sort of lying. I mean, that is lying that on a scale that you've never seen before. I wasn't sure I was going to run when I was taking all that money from Goldman. You lying fucking stop right there, Richie, before you have to redo the whole show.
There is a word. Politician.
Politician.
There we go. It's right there waiting for you.
One of the most evil people on planet Earth, right there. Bernie Sanders jumped all over it, quite rightly. You know, you're absolutely up to your neck in it with Wall Street, and you're talking about going after the banks, going after the big corporations that don't pay their way and pay their taxes. These people are liars. They're evil, sick liars. And of course, the only solution to this is to vote for none of them. When will people wake up and realise that they're being conned? It's a game. It's a reality television show that you're a part of. As you said last week, by the way, on this show, it is a nonsense. We're going to leave you with that. But we were going to leave you with that. We're going to leave you with something which might make you smile. Look how vacuously incompetent and completely out of touch with reality these multi-millionaire fucktards really are. This is Jeb Bush in, I don't know where he was when this happened. It wasn't in Iowa. Maybe it was in Iowa. With a rent-a-crowd. With a crowd that he's paid for. We know this because earlier in the week he was interrupted when two guys stood up and said they wanted their money. Did you see this weekend? The two guys that were sitting behind him jumped up. I played this on the radio show this week. Two guys went, "Where's the $50 we were promised?" In the middle of a speech.
Oh, fair enough.
Fair enough.
Man's got to eat.
A man's got to eat. They're so bad, these rent-a-crowds, that they don't even know when to clap. Have a look at this.
Jeb Bush
had an even worse one.
He's having a really bad campaign. Look at this campaign moment. This was in Hanover on Tuesday. Look at this.
I think the next president needs to be a lot quieter, but send a signal that we're prepared to act in the national security interests of this country to get back in the business of creating a more peaceful world. Please clap.
Oh, no.
You know, this campaign said everything except the candidate, right?
The resignation on his face, the game is up. When you've got to tell a rent-a-crowd who are there to enthusiastically and spontaneously break out into applause every 5 minutes to clap, you know you're fucked. That's it for the programme, mate. We're out of here today. Thanks for watching it. Thanks, Hayden, for your contributions, by the way, as usual, mate. I hope your back is better by the weekend. I know your young lad is not well either. 'Tis a season for unwellness. Unfortunately, it's cold and it's miserable and it's wet, and we're all unwell. Listen, when you see it on BVTV's YouTube channel or on my YouTube channel, share it around and make others, don't make others watch it, but suggest to others that they don't force it on them, but suggest that they do watch it. We'll see you again next Friday with another Richie Allen show in association with BVTV and DavidIke.com. Thanks for watching it. Have a great weekend. Bye for now. Bye for now.